She always thought she knew herself, every curve, every shadow, every secret corner of her heart. Her life had been steady, predictable, like the rhythm of a clock ticking in the background. She lived alone, worked from home, and spent most evenings curled up with a book or sipping tea by the window. She wasn't lonely, not really. Just quiet, comfortable in her solitude. Her neighbor's house was just across the fence, a little more chaotic, filled with laughter and music that sometimes spilled over into her yard. But she never paid much attention to them. Not until her asterisk. It started with a simple knock on the door. A bright voice asking if she could borrow some eggs. That was how she first met Clara, 27, bold, dressed like she owned the world even when she didn't. There was something magnetic about her presence. The way she smiled, the way she spoke, it wasn't just confidence, it was freedom. Clara wasn't afraid of silence, but she filled it with life anyway. That first conversation lasted longer than it should have. It felt like time stretched around them, soft and warm. What happens when someone walks into your life and makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself? They began running into each other, at the mailbox, on the porch, once even under the same umbrella during a sudden summer rain. Conversations grew longer, deeper. Clara asked questions no one ever had before, not just about her job or her hobbies, but about what she felt, what she wanted asterisk. It was unsettling at first, like being pulled out of still water and dropped into a current. But there was something thrilling about it too. Clara saw her in a way no one else had. And slowly, almost without realizing it, she started seeing herself differently too. One evening, they sat on Clara's porch, wine glasses in hand, the sky painted in soft oranges and purples. Clara leaned back, looked at her, and said, "You're so beautiful when you don't know anyone's watching." The words hit her like a wave. She laughed it off, called it a line, but inside, something shifted. That night, she lay awake, replaying the moment again and again. Not because it was romantic, not yet, but because for the first time in years, she felt seen asterisk. And then came the touch. Small at first, a brush of fingers as Clara handed her a glass, a lingering arm around her shoulder when they laughed too hard. Nothing big, nothing planned, but each moment left a mark. A warmth that stayed long after Clara was gone. She told herself it was just friendship. Maybe a little crush. Nothing serious. But deep down, she knew it was more. Because it wasn't just Clara's touch that stirred something in her. It was herself asterisk. The version of herself that had been hiding, waiting, unnoticed, now suddenly wide awake. What does it feel like when someone shows you parts of yourself you never even knew were missing? The next few weeks passed in a blur of shared moments and unspoken tension. They cooked together, walked through the neighborhood, talked about everything and nothing. Clara made her laugh in ways she hadn't in years. Made her cry too, not out of sadness, but because something inside her was breaking open. She realized how long it had been since someone had truly listened to her. Truly cared asterisk. And Clara did, in ways that scared her. Then came the night everything changed. A storm rolled in, loud and wild. Power went out across the street. Clara showed up at her door, flashlight in hand, eyes lit with mischief. "Can I crash here?" she asked, already stepping inside. They ended up on the couch, wrapped in blankets, listening to the thunder. The room felt smaller somehow, closer. The air between them thickened. And when Clara reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face, she didn't pull away. Their lips met, softly, carefully, like testing fire with bare hands. One kiss turned into two. Then three. Then a slow unraveling of years spent locked away. Years of silence, of playing small, of pretending. All of it melted in that moment. She kissed Clara like she was trying to remember something she'd forgotten. And maybe she was. Maybe this feeling, had always been buried inside her, waiting for the right person to dig it out. What happens when two people finally stop pretending and let themselves feel what they've been avoiding? Afterward, they didn't talk. Just held each other, breathing in sync, hearts pounding in rhythm. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, everything was still. In the days that followed, everything was different. And yet, strangely the same. They still talked, still laughed, still found reasons to touch. But now, there was an awareness between them. A new kind of energy. She caught herself watching Clara more closely, the way her mouth moved when she spoke, the way her eyes softened when she smiled. She wanted to memorize every detail, every inch, and that's when she realized something strange. She had spent so long thinking she knew herself, her body, her desires, her limits. But now, with Clara, she was discovering things she had never explored before. Things she had never even considered. Touches that sent shivers through her. Words whispered in the dark that made her heart race. Clara didn't just kiss her. She explored her. With patience. With curiosity. With care. How do you move forward when your entire world has shifted overnight? She had never thought of herself as closed off. But now, with Clara, she felt like a book that had only ever been half read. Pages folded, corners dog-eared, stories untold. Clara opened them one by one. Slowly, gently, with reverence, and with every turn, she discovered something new. Something exciting, something terrifying. She had spent her whole life thinking she knew herself, her body, her desires, her limits. But now, with Clara, she was discovering things she had never explored before. Things she had never even considered. Touches that sent shivers through her. Words whispered in the dark that made her heart race. Clara didn't just kiss her. She explored her. With patience. With curiosity. With care. What happens when someone shows you pleasure in a way you've never known before? She told herself it was just a fluke. A moment of weakness, of loneliness, of curiosity. But the truth settled in her chest like a stone. It wasn't just one kiss. It wasn't just a mistake. It was everything asterisk. And now that she had tasted something real, something raw and unfiltered, she couldn't pretend it didn't matter. The next morning was awkward at first. Not because Clara acted different, she didn't. She moved through the kitchen like nothing had changed, humming softly as she poured coffee into 2 mugs. Her smile was the same, her eyes still bright with that wild kind of energy. But to her, everything felt different. Like the world had shifted on its axis and no one else noticed. She kept waiting for Clara to say something. To explain what this meant. To ask if they were crossing a line or stepping into something new. But Clara never did. Instead, she handed over a steaming mug and said, "You're quiet today." That was all. What happens when you expect everything to change, but the person who kissed you acts like nothing happened? They went back to their usual rhythm after that. Talking, laughing, brushing hands more often than before. The tension was always there, simmering beneath the surface, but neither of them spoke about it. It was like they had agreed, without words, to let things unfold naturally. No pressure, no labels, just this asterisk. But inside, she was unraveling. She found herself thinking about Clara constantly. About the way she touched her. The way she looked at her. The way she made her feel like she was the only person in the room. And worse, or maybe better, she started noticing how other people looked at Clara too. How strangers smiled a little longer when she passed. How coworkers lingered a second too long in conversation. Clara was magnetic. Everyone saw it. And suddenly, she wanted to be the one pulling at that magnet. She wanted to be the one who got to keep Clara's attention. Who got to hear her laugh late at night. Who got to see her messy hair in the morning and know she hadn't shared that with anyone else. What happens when someone opens a door you didn't know was closed? Can you ever go back to the person you were before? One evening, they sat outside again, the sky painted in soft pinks and purples. Clara leaned against her shoulder, her head resting gently as they talked about nothing and everything. The air between them was thick with something unspoken, something electric. Then Clara lifted her head and looked at her. Really looked at her, like she could see every thought racing through her mind. Every doubt, every fear, every desire. "You think too much," Clara whispered. She laughed nervously. "Is that a bad thing?" Clara tilted her head. Sometimes. Sometimes you just have to let go. What does it mean when someone sees right through you, and likes what they find? It was a small moment. Nothing dramatic, but it stayed with her. Because it was the first time Clara acknowledged that she was thinking, that she was feeling, that she was caught somewhere between fear and want. And instead of walking away from that, Clara leaned in. That night, she lay awake again. Not because she was confused, not because she was scared, but because she knew she was falling. Slowly, deeply, helplessly, and she didn't know if she wanted to stop. What happens when you finally stop fighting your heart, and let yourself fall? In the days that followed, things began to shift. Subtly, quietly, Clara started showing up at her door more often. Small gestures became bigger. A touch on the arm turned into a hand held a little longer. A casual comment became a lingering look. And then came the kisses, soft, slow, full of meaning. Each one felt like a secret being whispered between them. Each one pulled her further in. She stopped pretending it was just a phase. Stopped telling herself it would pass. Because it wasn't going away. If anything, it was growing. And for the first time in years, she let herself feel it. What does it feel like when love doesn't just change your heart, but changes how you see yourself? But falling wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt. Moments where she questioned everything. Was this real? Was she just filling a void? Was she confusing comfort with love? She didn't have answers, only feelings, and those feelings were loud. One night, they ended up tangled together on the couch again, wrapped in blankets and warmth. Clara kissed her slowly, deeply, like she had all the time in the world. And then, she whispered, "You're so beautiful." Not just her face, not just her body, her asterisk, all of her. That night, she let go. Fully, completely, no more questions, no more hesitation, just her and Clara, locked in a moment that felt like it belonged only to them. And when Clara's hands moved over her skin, when her lips traced paths she'd never explored before, she realized something. She had spent her whole life thinking she knew herself. But now, with Clara, she was discovering parts of her she had never even known existed. What happens when love doesn't just change your heart, but changes how you see yourself? She had always thought love was something that happened to you, like a storm rolling in, unpredictable and impossible to control. But with Clara, it felt different. It wasn't just happening to her. She was stepping into it, choosing it, feeling it grow stronger with every shared breath, every quiet moment, every kiss that lingered too long. But with love came questions. Big ones. Ones she wasn't sure how to answer. Was this real? Was it lasting? Or was it just a spark that would fade once the novelty wore off? What happens when you start falling for someone, but you're not sure if they're falling for the real you? At first, she tried to keep things light. They laughed, they kissed, they spent hours wrapped in each other's arms. But beneath the surface, she felt herself pulling back. Not because she didn't want this, because she did. More than anything, but wanting something so much made her afraid of losing it. She started overthinking everything, every word Clara said, every look she gave, every time she hesitated before saying, "I'll see you later," or, "I had fun tonight." Were those just casual phrases? Or were they hiding something deeper? And then there was the past. Hers and Clara's both. The relationships that came before. The wounds that hadn't fully healed. The fears that still whispered in the dark. Can love truly be new, or do we always carry pieces of our past into it? One night, after a long silence between them, Clara turned to her and asked, "What are you scared of?" She didn't answer right away. Because she didn't know where to start. There was fear of rejection. Fear of being too much or not enough. Fear of letting herself believe in something only to wake up one day and find it gone. And maybe most of all, fear of what this meant about her. About who she had been. Who she was becoming. Because loving Clara didn't just feel like a relationship. It felt like a transformation. And transformations were terrifying. When love makes you question your entire identity, how do you hold on? They talked more after that. Really talked. Not just about their days or favorite movies, but about the things that mattered. Their fears. Their dreams. Their scars. Clara opened up about a past relationship that left her feeling broken. About how hard it was to trust again. About how she had almost convinced herself she didn't need anyone. And when she listened, really listened, she realized something. They were both broken in different ways. And maybe that's what made them fit so well. What happens when two people fall in love, but both are afraid to admit it out loud? It was strange, in a way. How two people could be so drawn to each other, yet both hesitate at the edge of something real. Like standing at the top of a diving board, knowing the water is deep but still fearing the jump. But eventually, Clara took the leap. One evening, as they sat outside under the soft glow of fairy lights, she reached for her hand and said, "You make me feel safe." It wasn't a declaration of love. Not exactly, but it was close. And it was enough. What does it mean when someone tells you they feel safe with you, and you realize you feel the same? From that moment on, things shifted again. Subtly, but surely, they stopped pretending this was just a fling. Stopped brushing off the emotions that came with every touch, every conversation, every night spent tangled together. They became them asterisk. Quietly, slowly, but undeniably, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. When did you stop running from love, and finally let yourself stay? Still, there were moments of doubt. Times when she wondered if she was moving too fast. If she was reading too much into small gestures. If she was confusing comfort with something deeper. But then Clara would do something so small, so intimate, that reminded her this wasn't just a phase. Like the way she remembered how she liked her coffee. Or the way she knew exactly how to calm her down when anxiety crept in late at night. Or the way she held her without saying a word when she needed it most. Those were the moments she clung to. The ones that proved this was real. What happens when someone knows you better than you know yourself? One night, she woke up to Clara watching her. Just staring, quietly, like she was memorizing every detail. "What?" she mumbled sleepily. Clara smiled. "Nothing. I just like looking at you." That was it. No grand speech. No dramatic confession. Just a simple truth. And somehow, it meant everything. What does it feel like when someone sees you, not just your face, but your soul, and still wants to stay? She had always thought that once you let yourself fall in love, everything else would fall into place. That the fear would fade, the doubts would disappear, and life would settle into something soft and steady. But love didn't erase her fears, it just made her face them. And some days, that was harder than she expected. There were moments when she felt like she was walking on glass. Like one wrong word, one hesitation, could shatter everything. She caught herself holding back, not because she didn't want to give Clara everything, but because she was terrified of giving too much and still not being enough. How do you let someone love you, when you're still learning how to love yourself? One night, after a long silence between them, Clara finally asked, "Why do you keep hiding from me?" It wasn't an accusation, it was a question, soft, honest, and it broke something open inside her. She didn't answer right away. Because she didn't know how. How could she explain that she wasn't hiding on purpose? That she wanted to be open, truly open, but every time she tried, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something too big to jump into. Clara didn't push for an answer. She just reached for her hand and held it, grounding her without words. What happens when someone sees your walls, and instead of walking away, they sit beside you and wait for you to open them? They started talking more after that. About the past, about the things that shaped them, about the fears that still lingered even now, wrapped up in something beautiful. Clara told her about a relationship she had years ago, one that ended badly. One that left her feeling like love wasn't worth the risk. She talked about how hard it was to trust again. About how she used to believe that if she stayed guarded, she'd never get hurt. And as she listened, she realized something. They were both broken in different ways. And maybe that's what made them fit so well. Can two broken people build something whole, or did they just break each other more? The truth was, love didn't fix them. It didn't erase their scars or rewrite their pasts. But it gave them a chance to heal, together. And healing wasn't pretty, it was messy, it was painful, it was full of missteps and misunderstandings. But it was real. There were nights when she cried without knowing why. When old wounds surfaced, uninvited. And Clara never judged her for it. She just held her, let her feel it all. Let her break apart without trying to glue her back together too fast. What happens when someone lets you fall apart, and still stays by your side? One night, after a particularly rough day, she curled up next to Clara and whispered, "I don't know how to do this." Clara didn't ask what she meant. She just kissed her forehead and said, "You don't have to know everything right now. Just stay with me," and that was enough. Because love wasn't about having all the answers. It was about showing up. Even when you were scared. Even when you weren't sure where things were going. Even when you felt like you had nothing left to give. What does it mean when love isn't perfect, but it's still enough? As the weeks passed, she started to change. Not in obvious ways. Not in ways that anyone else might notice. But inside, something was shifting. She was learning to trust. To speak up when she needed something. To lean on Clara instead of pulling away. And most importantly, to stop apologizing for who she was. Because Clara loved her exactly as she was. Not the version of herself she tried to present to the world. Not the version she thought people wanted. Just her asterisk, flaws and all. What does it feel like when someone loves you, not despite your flaws, but because of them? One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Clara turned to her and said, "You're different now." She frowned. Different how? Clara smiled. Like, you're not afraid to be seen anymore. And maybe she wasn't. Maybe love hadn't fixed her. Maybe it had just given her the courage to stop hiding. When did you stop pretending, and start letting yourself be truly known? There were days when she woke up feeling like she was flying. Like Clara's love had lifted her into a place she never thought she'd reach. But then there were other days, darker ones, when the weight of it all came crashing down. She would look at Clara and wonder how someone so full of light could want someone like her. Someone who still carried old wounds. Someone who sometimes pulled away without meaning to. Someone who wasn't always easy to love. And that fear, that deep, quiet fear, crept in more often than she wanted to admit. What if Clara woke up one day and realized she deserved better? What happens when love starts to feel like a burden, instead of a gift? One night, after a long silence between them, she finally said what had been sitting heavy in her chest for weeks. "I'm afraid I'm not enough for you." Clara looked at her like she had just asked the sky to explain why it was blue. "Why would you think that?" She shrugged. "Because you're bold, you're confident, you walk into a room and everyone notices you. And me, I'm quiet, I hesitate, I overthink everything, sometimes I wonder if you even see me the way I see you." Clara didn't say anything right away. She just reached for her hand and held it tight. Then she said, "I don't love you because you're like me. I love you because you're you asterisk. Because you feel deeply. Because you think before you speak. Because you care in a way most people don't. What does it feel like when someone sees your flaws, and loves you for them?" It was the first time she truly believed that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to be someone else to be loved. But belief didn't erase doubt overnight. Old habits died hard, old fears whispered louder in the dark. And sometimes, when Clara was quiet or distracted, she found herself spiraling again. Was she boring Clara? Was she holding her back? Was this all just a passing phase? How do you stop questioning love, when your heart keeps reminding you of every reason to run? One evening, they sat outside under the stars, wrapped in blankets and silence. The air between them was thick with something unspoken. Finally, Clara turned to her and said, "You don't have to earn my love." The words hit her like a wave. She blinked. "What?" Clara smiled softly. "You heard me. You don't have to prove yourself to me. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to change. You already have me, just as you are." And something inside her cracked open. Not in pain, not in sadness, but in release, like she had been holding on to something too tightly for too long, and now, she was finally letting go. What happens when someone tells you they love you, and you finally believe them? From that moment on, she tried to soften, tried to trust more, tried to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. But healing wasn't linear. Some days, she still doubted. Some nights, she still feared. But now, when those moments came, she didn't hide them. She shared them. She told Clara when she felt insecure, when she needed reassurance, when she needed space, and Clara never judged her for it. Instead, she listened, held her, kissed her forehead, whispered, "I'm still here." What does it mean when love doesn't demand perfection, but gives you space to grow? One night, as they lay tangled together in bed, Clara brushed a strand of hair from her face and said, "You know, loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done." She looked at her, surprised. Clara smiled. "It just is asterisk. You don't make me work for it. You just give it freely. And I want you to know that I give it back the same way." That was the moment she understood. Love wasn't about earning it. It wasn't about proving herself. It wasn't about being someone she wasn't. It was about showing up. Being honest. Letting herself be seen, even when it scared her. What happens when you finally stop asking if you're worthy, and start believing that you are? The days blurred into nights, and the nights stretched into something soft and steady. She no longer felt like she was walking on glass. No more fear of breaking something just by breathing too loudly. No more waiting for the moment when Clara would decide this wasn't what she wanted after all. Because now, she knew asterisk. She knew it in the way Clara looked at her, not just with love, but with certainty. She knew it in the way they moved through life together now, not as two separate people trying to fit, but as something whole. Something real, and maybe most of all, she knew it in the way she saw herself. What happens when someone loves you so deeply, that you start to believe in yourself too? She used to think she had known herself completely. Every inch, every corner, every hidden part, but Clara had shown her something new. Not just about love, not just about desire, but about who she was beneath all the layers she had built over the years. Clara didn't just accept her. She celebrated her. Every quiet moment, every deep thought, every tear she tried to hide, every laugh that came too late because she was still thinking about what she had just heard. All of it, seen. All of it, loved. And that changed everything, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She wasn't just existing in the spaces between other people's lives. She was living asterisk. What does it feel like when you finally stop hiding, and start embracing who you truly are? There were days when she caught herself smiling without knowing why. Days when she looked in the mirror and didn't see flaws, just a woman who had survived her fears, who had stepped into something brave and beautiful. She had spent so long thinking she was broken, that she needed fixing, that if she could just be different, she'd finally feel whole. But Clara showed her that she wasn't broken at all. She was just waiting to be seen. If you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening, for staying with me through every doubt, every fear, every moment of realization. If there's one thing I hope you take from this story, it's this: you don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to change who you are to make someone stay. And, sometimes, the person who shows you who you really are, comes from the most unexpected place. So if you found this story moving, if it reminded you of your own journey, or someone you love, please share it. Let others know they're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, raw, emotional, real, hit that subscribe button below. Because there's more where this came from. Until next time.